My name is Jonathan Hicks. Today we're drawing line graphs. Now again, we're doing this by hand in this video. If you want to know how to draw line graphs on a computer, I'll do another video for that using Excel and I'll show you how to do that. But in this video, we're drawing line graphs by hand on a piece of paper. Now I'm just going to show you the method on the board here. And for that, we're going to need a frequency table. So give me a second, I'll draw up a quick frequency table and I'll explain how you construct the line graph. Alright, there we go. Now what I've chosen here is the average price of gold over a few different years. Line graphs are very well suited to show progression, particularly over a period of time. So that's why I've chosen something that varies over time. Now these aren't particularly accurate, I've sort of guessed a bit of what it might be. But we're imagining that the gold price in 2010 on average was $1,310. These are in US dollars. Gold is usually measured in dollars like that. But it's very important with a frequency table, firstly that the column titles say what's in them, but that you also say what the units are. The units are really important here. So the fact that this is US dollars rather than pounds, say, is very important. Because if these were pounds, the price would be very different. I'll come back to that when we talk about the line graph. So for a line graph, you always have two axes, one to represent each of the things that you're plotting. The time axis, or the progression axis, which is going to be this one here, always goes along the bottom. So that's the first thing you want to get right. Your progression, in this case the years, are going to go along the bottom. So I'll write years here. Your other axis then, the thing that you measure, always goes up the side. So price, in this case, is going to go up here. And as I was saying here, when you label your axes, and you must always label your axes for a line graph, or for any chart generally, so price here, year for that one, you must specify the units. It's not enough to say price, you must say what it's measured in. In this case, the price is being measured in dollars. So we'll stick dollars there. You usually just specify the units in brackets after the axis label. So the years then will go along the bottom. So I usually put a little ring round those to show that that's where the origin is, that's where the two things cross. So the years, we're going to have 2010, 2011, etc. Now when you do this, you're going to do it on graph paper, and you need to think a bit more carefully than me about the scale. You need to make sure these are all the same width apart. You can use the little squares on the graph paper to work that out. You want your graph to fill the graph paper if you can. You don't want it to go off the edge, but you want it to be as big as possible while still fitting on the graph paper. So you need to decide carefully what your scale is going to be. Now, up the side here, I've got a range of different prices. But my lowest price is 1,310. So I don't actually need anything below 1,300. My highest is 1,600. So it might make sense here for me to start at 1,300 and go up to 1,700, say. Now there's a slight issue because I'm kind of saying here that this should be 0, and I'll explain what we do about that in a moment. But if you leave a little gap, you can just start this at 1,300, say there. Oh, I just noticed there's a 1,290. We can probably fit that just under that one, that'll be fine. So 1,300, 1,400, 1,500, and 1,600 is about as big as it's going to get. That should if we go just slightly above that for the 1620, that should be fine. Now, as I say, because we're not starting at 0, what you can do is if you leave a little gap there and you do like a little lightning symbol, so it kind of looks like that. That's called a discontinuity, and it means that there's a gap here. So we start at 0, there's a bit of a gap, and then we get to 1,300. After this, though, there are no gaps. Each of these should be equally spaced as you go up the line. And again, use your graph paper, count the squares, work out how big you can make it so that it fits on the graph paper while being as big as possible. You don't want to squeeze it in the corner of your graph paper or anything like that. Once you've got your two axes with the numbers, you've labelled them, you specified the units, then you can plot the points. So your first one, 2010, needs to have a price of $1,310. So 2010, from here you go straight up, find out where the 1310 is. Now again, you can be accurate here because you'll be using graph paper, and you basically put a little cross where those two things meet, where 2010 meets 1310 on that axis. And you go through the rest of them, put in the crosses. So 2011 should be 1480, so more or less that's going to be about there. 2012, 1620, so that's just above the 1600 point there. 2013 is 1500, so that goes bang on that one. And finally, 2014 is 1290, so it's going to be just shy of the 1300 one over there. So that's my line graph. Now, that's the points at least. Once you've plotted the points, you need to join them up with a line. That's why it's called a line graph. You must use a ruler though. Now, I don't have a ruler here, but you're not going to be trying to do a smooth curve or anything. You join them up with straight lines. So from this first cross, you draw a straight line to the second cross, and then another line up to that one, another straight line to there, and finally down to the bottom. So you get a line graph that varies like that. And usually they tend to go up and down depending on what you're picking. But you must join them up with straight lines. The last thing then for a line graph is you must give it a title, and it's got to refer to what we're talking about here. So obviously in this case we're doing the average gold price. So your title might be the average price of gold. And again, it's good practice to specify what the units are, even in your title. So it's the average price in dollars of gold. So that's how you construct a line chart. It's great for progression where something varies over time. So your thing you're measuring, the price axis always goes at the side, the time axis, the progression always goes along the bottom. Plot the points, join them up with straight lines. Make sure you've labeled your axes and specified the units, and give it a title.